Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our AI in Focus live stream series. I'm Chad Pytel, the CEO of Thoughtbot and a developer, and I'm joined today by Jimmy. Jimmy, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey, I'm a developer at Thoughtbot. I've been here for about 3 years and I've worked on a wide array of projects. So stemming from like MVPs for smaller clients and like new product ideas to monolith code bases for our larger enterprisey clients. So yeah, it's great to be here, Chad.
Yeah, thanks for joining me. I'm excited to dive in today. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that Thoughtbot is a very strong, long-lasting design and development studio. We work with clients all along the different product life cycle stages to create amazing apps that people love to use. And so if you're looking for someone to work with, to bring your new idea to life like we're going to do today, then please get in touch with us at thoughtbot.com/hire us. Awesome. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be working on an information summarization system using an LLM. And I'm going to go over what the feature is in the UI. That's probably the best way to dig into it. But just what we mean by summarization is, and in general, this is something that LLMs are pretty good at, which is being able to give a long piece of text or a bunch of information and to say, please summarize this and reduce it down into a certain size. And you can say, give me a paragraph summary, give me a few sentences, give me a one-sentence summary. And they're pretty decent with this, but there are some challenges with it in terms of information dropping and summarizing the right information. We're going to hit those along the way. We're also going to hit along the way something that we touched on last time, which is when we were sending information to the LLM, we were sending a lot of proprietary information along with people's names and other personal information. And we talked about ways for that particular problem we were solving. Rails, we were able to completely obfuscate people's names when being sent to the LLM using Rails global IDs and sending Rails global IDs to the LLM instead, so that when we get the responses back, we get the global IDs back and we can do find and replace on them on our side. So it completely doesn't send any personal information to the LLM. When we do that problem today, we're going to be dealing with more unstructured data and we're not going to be able to solve it the same way. And so we're going to talk about ways that we're going to be able to solve that in a different way. So let's jump over to the feature, and Jimmy, feel free to ask any questions along the way about the feature. So what we have here on the screen is a sort of a CRM record. So we have a CRM at Thoughtbot, and then we have like a scheduling planning system where a version of every potential client in our CRM is reflected. We can discuss it with a wider group. We can put staffing information on it, including what skills and stuff that it would need to do for the project. You can see that there's a lot of conversation. There's a lot of conversation on this record. So I have obfuscated everybody's names. This is it starts from a real record at Thoughtbot, but I've changed all the company names and the people's names on it to be fake. I used Faker to replace everything.
Are we, Chad, are we scraping the comments in addition to the summary at the top?
That's what we're going to aim to do, because part of the problem that we're solving here is that you see how much comments there are. People are leaving comments all along as we work on scoping out the project. But someone coming to this page for the first time looks at this and sees the sort of original note that the person put in when they contacted us. And there's a big thing here about everything that happened since then. So that's actually
Yeah.
what we want to get to is we want to get to the idea behind this feature is to be able to either right here or right above this block put an LLM generated summary, an AI generated summary of to give an idea of the current state of things and what happened along the way in a more abbreviated way that someone can look
Nice.
at
Yeah. Just
quickly.
being someone that works at Thoughtbot and seeing this potential makes me excited because it is
Yeah.
a lot to get up to speed on the context.
Yeah, and also it's not uncommon, like, so here's a whole thing about like what their current stack is and all that stuff. But then down here, in fact, I think this is real, like someone's being mentioned like way down here to be like, hey, can you take a look at this? Which
Hmm.
probably happens to you all the time, Jimmy. And so you follow that link to that mention, and it's like this wall of comments and progress and everything that you need to feel that you need to get caught up on in order to do that. So that's the idea. We're actually going to go over implementing this in a fairly generic way because we have the potential within this application to have several useful places where it would be able to summarize something. And so, what I envision is the ability to attach an LLM summary, basically functionality and model to any of those records. Maybe it's a
Hmm.
message thread, or it's the opportunity, or something else.
Yeah, like internal messages we post all the time.
Yeah.
It'd be nice maybe to have a summary of those or something.
Yep. Exactly.
Hmm.
So now that we have an overview of the what the feature is going to be, I think we'll pop over to our AI ethics guide. And this is a guide that we wrote that it's good whenever we're starting to work on an AI driven feature to revisit this guide. It's just a series of questions to ask yourself, and really, these questions are not specific to AI. They're probably good to ask about any feature if you care about the ethics of it. But because of the field of AI constantly changing and the capabilities constantly changing right now, we found when we did the research into how to apply ethics to it, it's best to just have a series of guiding questions right now that take us through that. So how have we ensured that our AI systems are transparent and understandable to humans? So what we envision for this feature is that it's going to be obvious what the what the AI generated summary is. It's going to be there, and so it's going to be obvious. And I think that all of the information that's going into the summary is going to be here. So I think it's pretty transparent what's going into the summary. Anything
So
to
that could be like a little footnote on the AI summary, kind of like on
Yeah, that's a good
Amazon
point. It
listing
should
for
probably
customer
say
review.
like this summary was generated from the description, the comments, and the
Hmm.
staffing, the skill information or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever goes into it, it should probably have a note about that.
Hmm.
How have we made sure our AI systems are fair and unbiased and don't discriminate against any particular group? So, one thing that might happen if we're trying to summarize something is that a minority mention of something or a minority group within the overall context of the thing being summarized might be dropped because it's not a big part of the discussion. So that's something to keep in mind. And as you hit a question like that, it's like, okay, is that a big enough problem so as not to introduce the feature or not?
Yeah, and is this um, something you can solve with prompting well?
I think that's one thing you can do is you sort of note it and say, okay, let's note that and see if we can solve it with prompting. Another thing
Mm-hmm.
I personally come back to, and honestly, I don't know whether this is 100% correct to do this or not, is to say, well, would this be any worse by doing it with an AI?
Mm-hmm.
And if our concern is that in a big discussion, sort of a minority thing like the design component of this project that's not very talked about very much is dropped, that's not necessarily any worse than a person looking at it and realizing there's one comment about design way back in the discussion and I missed it.
Mm-hmm.
So that might, it's maybe not, we're not happy about that, but it might not be any worse than a person doing it.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, if we can solve it with through prompting, then we might even make it even better.
Mm-hmm.
How have we protected the privacy of individuals and their data? So I already touched on that a little bit. This discussion thread includes a whole bunch of names, company names, that kind of thing. We have strategies for dealing with that. We're actually going to hit limitations in those strategies that we used last time, and we're going to grapple with that today. So we don't need to dig too much into that. But if we look at the actually, let's just do it now. The problem we're going to hit is last time, as long as we have structured data and we know where mentions of private information are, then we can,
Mm-hmm.
before we send them to the LLM, remove them, replace them with a placeholder, then send it to the LLM. And when we get the answer back, we replace all our placeholders with the real information so that private information is never sent to the LLM. So
I see
here's the
comments as a problem.
What'd you say?
I would guess comments are
Yes,
tricky.
exactly. Comments are the problem here because take for example, this is notes written by somebody and there's someone, so we have the person who left the comments, we have mentions. So those are structured data. We could parse through the comments and find those things. Here's someone's name being mentioned, but not as a structured mention. It's just written in the comment. There might be other company names in here. There might be other pieces of information that are confidential that we don't necessarily want to send to third-party services. This might not be an issue for your application. And in fact, internal discussions at Thoughtbot about a potential client, and if you read the terms of service of ChatGPT or that kind of thing, they don't present that huge of an issue. It's just what makes us comfortable, right? And I think that this is the boundary of what makes us comfortable. What makes you comfortable might be a little bit different. But where you do really run into situations is if this was doctor's notes, for example, mentioning personal private information that you want to summarize the note in an LLM, that might be a significant issue for what you're doing. So it all will depend on the application, but it's something to keep in mind. So those mentions, just the things people write that aren't structured mentions, it's very difficult to know that we can, no matter how someone writes them, find the references to them, replace them with placeholders, and then swap them back out once the LLM returns it. That's going to be very difficult to do. So we'll talk about solutions to that later. For now, we'll proceed with, okay, that is an issue that we're going to need to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
How have we ensured clear accountability and responsibility for our AI systems and their output? So we're going to display it clearly as a summary. We already said we're going to say what goes into the summary.
Will we mention the model being used?
We could mention the model being used. Yep.
Mhm.
The other is, or the next thing I want to, the next two items are relevant. So how we guaranteed the safety and security of our AI systems and prevented them from being used to cause harm, and how have we ensured that our AI systems are always under human control and don't make decisions that can't be overridden by humans. So all three of these are going to be solved by a strategy that I think basically every LLL summarization system that we would build in our applications would have a certain feature set. And that is, you should be able to edit a person should be able to edit or correct the summary. And once you do that, then it helps a lot when it comes to these ethics questions. But there are certain strategies for being able to edit a summary. So let's think it through. If the summary is being generated every time a new comment is added, then if you allow edits to the summary, you either need to keep track of those edits and reapply them, which might be really, really difficult because new information is added
to the LLM.
Yeah,
interesting.
Exactly. Or you need to stop at a point in time. So you would say, this summary has been edited and therefore I can no longer generate a new summary. Or there's another strategy, which is, you were touching on it. You can keep track of the edits and send them along to the LLM with it. But there's ultimately one really good way to do it. And that is, instead of letting people edit things directly, you instead allow them to manipulate the prompt by applying edits that say how to change the summary.
Yes, I was thinking that. So you could basically have a little place to edit the summary, which would in effect be sending a new prompt with that summary telling the LLM how to modify what it's written.
Yes. And then we'll have basically a UI that says, here's how people have modified this summary, and the ability to add more modifications to it. So basically to course correct the summary. So you might say, your summary might have completely dropped the fact that we need to do design on this project, to use that as an example again. So you, instead of editing the summary to the actual text of the summary, you would provide additional instructions to either not drop that information or for how to apply it to the summary. So, and you would be able to see, as a person doing that in real time, whether you were getting the results that you expected.
So say there's a new comment added to a summary that we manually edited the prompt for. Would that manually edited prompt be added to the additional generations? Like if someone adds a new comment, will the LLM know to apply our edit again?
That's exactly the idea. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That it regenerates the summary along with the additional instructions that people provided.
That sounds great.
And then we'll have and then ultimately the other thing we'll have, and what I really recommend people do, is there should be an admin control panel that allows someone to see all of the summaries, so that you don't need to browse to each individual place being summarized in order to audit the quality of them or for issues. So ultimately we'll end up with and we're going to use administrate for that. So if you don't, administrate is an open source project that we use that allows very quick, rapid generation of admin panels. And so they'll basically be, summaries over here, and you'll be able to click here and see all the places throughout our application where summaries have been generated and what they are. And that will allow for additional human oversight in an easy way. And I really recommend that. Ultimately, what we're going to end up with here is actually a perfect Rails engine, like a drop-in Rails engine to basically add has summary to our active record models and a way to define what the how those summaries are generated, a UI for being able to display and edit summaries, and an admin UI for being able to see all the summaries across the system and be able to monitor and audit them. So maybe in a future AI live stream, we'll start to create a gem that does all of this functionality. I think that'd be really cool.
Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to see the summaries as a end user too, at least maybe to start, like kind of like when you can see edited comments, on UIs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, any other thoughts or questions before we jump into the implementation?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. Let's change the streaming profile here. Okay, so I created a branch, summaries, and if you've been watching the previous live streams, you'll know we have a prompt class in our application here. This is a slightly modified version of the prompt class, just to get that out of the way if people have been watching. And if you have been watching, or if you're just joining for the first time, awesome. Welcome back, or welcome here. If you've got questions or comments or anything along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're monitoring that. We'll be able to see it, and we can answer them along the way. It can be what we're working on directly, or it could be something else that you're curious about. So we have our prompt class, and what that does, it's currently using the 3.5 ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo model. And this new version of the prompt class has just the responsibility of sending a prompt to the LLM and getting back a response, which it puts in a response object, which has either an error, it has a success method. If there's no error, it'll return true, and a text method, which is the response text from the LLM. So the reason why we did that, so our other functionality for being able to answer questions from the LLM has been extracted into its own question class. And you see this question class has the text of the question that's being asked. And then it knows how to search our GitHub repos for relevant documents where that question might be answered, and then put together a specific context that's not too big, and then use the prompt class with a specific prompt to answering the question. So this provides a little bit of a framework for what we're going to end up with here, which is we're going to end up with like a summary class that knows how to use the prompt class to be able to summarize information.
Mm-hmm. So is this basically the global search feature we have on our internal tool?
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's the question class. We developed this code in the previous live streams. It's just I've separated out so we have a generic prompt class that doesn't know how to search the repos, because that's not functionality that everything that uses prompts needs to know about. So we have our prompt class, and well, if you can see the question, the specs for the question class, can now stub out the prompt in terms of like, when we prompt with this, we expect to get this back. And that limits the testing to a sort of a concentrated way that we can exercise that our class is working well, separate from whether the LLM communication is working the way we expect. And we've got tests around the prompt class, which ensure that it works with the LLM the way that we expect.
Cool.
Okay, so let's what did I didn't modify anything. Oh, I
Oh,
wrapped
you
the
just broke that, yeah.
okay. So we got no changes so far. So let's we are going to test drive this code today. And so let's not worry about so much about making a generic because that's going to make things too let's focus on introducing the feature, and then along the way we'll try to tease out what makes sense to be generic or what makes sense to add along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So if we go over, so the model that we're adding the summary to is the opportunity model. It's a fairly large model because it's doing a lot. Um, and if you remember, this is the UI for that model. An opportunity. It's got a lot of comments on it. It has staffing information. So if we go over to the code, we can see the opportunity has comments, skills, which are the staffing information, and
Mm-hmm.
estimates, which are, how long those skills are going to be used for, that kind of thing. So if we were just adding summarizations to one model, we could probably add like a summary text field to the model. And then there'd be a class that every time that model changes or something associated with that model changes, it sends another like background job to a class that summarizes things,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it would just be in here as a callback. And I think that's where we'll do the uh, first thing, is that instead of, I think it makes sense that instead, since we know we want to, is a big class already, we know we want to make it so that multiple classes can have summaries of them. And we know that we're going to need something that generates summaries. That's a responsibility that I think makes sense to live outside of our opportunity class. And it makes sense for that field to be outside of the opportunity class as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the way that this would be is we would introduce a new model.
A
And so our
summary model.
opportunity will belong to that new model, and it'll be like
Mm-hmm.
a summary model.
Yeah.
And it will be optional because when we roll this out, not everything might have a summary. So we'll let our tests guide us here in terms of that. So the expected opportunity to belong to an association called summary, and there isn't one.
I'll type it there at the beginning.
Thank you. So the summary model class for the opportunity summary association is not an active record subclass. Okay, so now we're going to run into a first issue. We're calling it summary, and our app already has a class called summary.
It does.
um, and this summary class is responsible for summarizing something completely different. So we need to resolve that. Let's call this LLM summary, unless you have a better name. Oh,
No,
you know
that's
what? Let's
you
call
made
it
it.
generated summary.
Oh, yeah, that's nice. That's nice. Because who knows, in a few years we'll just be art- artificial general intelligence, right? It won't be LLMs anymore. Who knows?
uh, okay, expected it to have a belongs to association called generated summary. Generated summary does not exist. So and I'm gonna generate a migration. Created. Fix that typo. Okay, so now we have create generated summaries. So we can modify this along the way as we discover things, but we know that it needs a relationship to
opportunities.
I just noticed Copilot's not running, so we're flying commando here without GitHub Copilot. And I just need to refresh my memory on the syntax here. Create table, so it's generated summaries. Okay, so we'll call this opportunity. And then what do we want to call the field that stores the text of the generated summary? Do we want to just call it text?
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Okay.
Do we need to go ahead and add the field for modifying the prompt, or is that later?
I think we'll add that later once we actually add the feature. Right now, this is just the bare bones.
Mm-hmm. Get those tests to pass.
Yeah. Strictly speaking, we didn't need to add the text field either to get it to work, but so once again, if you have any questions or comments along the way, feel free to drop them in chat. We're keeping a look. Thanks for watching, everybody. Expected opportunity to have a belongs to association called generated summary does not exist. So I had created the generated summary class, but it was empty. So I created the file, but it was empty. Opportunity does not have a generated summary ID foreign key. And so that makes me realize that we put the foreign key on the generated summary, which is correct. What's wrong here is the original expectation that this would be a belongs to. It should be a have one. And we'll move it down here with the other have ones. So this is just a matter of where the foreign key is. And now we no longer need the optional.
Gotcha.
So yeah, now it's saying, and let's move this down. So optional is the default on a have one, so that's why we can remove that. Okay, so now that spec is passing. So we have our generated summary, and we wrote this empty class file. Let's start some specs for that.
Yeah.
Um, so we'll add that relationship should belong to opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so this is the belongs to side of it. And the default on a belongs to is required. So we don't need to specify that.
Cool. All right.
So I think the generated for now we can have like the code that generates the summary by talking to the LLM. I think we can put that right in the generated summary class in like a generate method or something like that, and maybe we'll change that along the way. But
Yeah, and this will call our existing prompt class, right?
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So let's think about, when it comes to specs, it's a good so like let's just assume we're going to call it generate. So it a summary.
Generates the summary using our prompt.
Yeah. I was going to say of the associated object
Yes.
using. Yeah, let's go with that. Okay, so we have the prompt class. So we allow prompt to receive new and return prompt. So then we're going to say prompt, and we're going to make a double of the prompt.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the
What is double doing?
it's creating a basically a fake version of the prompt class that our class is going to use instead. So it has a perform method on it that actually does the perform. Response is called, and if response isn't populated yet, it will call perform. So basically, we're going to and then the response returns a response which returns success or and then the text. So if you remember, the question spec provided an example of how would do this.
Okay, got it.
So we'll just copy that over for speed purposes. Oops. So what we end up with here is we're creating a mock for what that prompt class perform method does. Is going to return object with a response text.
Cool.
And then
so we're just mocking this out, kind of circumventing calling the actual LLM.
Right. So now we set up an opportunity. And we're using factory bot to be able to quickly create a bare bones opportunity. We create a generated summary. We give it that opportunity. So then we say summary.generate. And what we expect at the end of that is summary.text to equal response. Whenever we are using mocking or stubbing with allows, it's always also good to make sure that things are working the way that we expect by adding things. So we would have expected prompt to have received new. And we would have expected this prompt instance to have received does it perform? We're not. We could add what we're expecting it to be called with. Just not off the top. What would it be called?
What is have received new doing under the hood? Just expecting it to exist.
Expecting it to have been called. So we're just making sure that the things that we stubbed out are actually called by our class. Because you can get in a scenario where like you've set up a bunch of stuff, but it's not actually what's happening under the hood. And that can cause your test to not actually be testing what you're expecting. Okay, I think we can go over the generated summary class now. And actually, let's run this spec to see whether we expect it to fail. And then, so undefined method generate. So let's do that. So I hope, while this goes, I hope what people are watching are coming away from this whole series, really taking a step back and getting a little meta. Stephanie and I had the same sort of point last time. Stephanie hadn't done very much AI LLM stuff before, and came away with what I was hoping that most people come away with, which is this is just Rails development. Like we're generating models, we're doing functionality, we're using an API. This is what we do every day with Rails development. The majority of it is things we already know how to do. And then once we start interacting with the LLM, it's not magic. There's documentation about how all this works, just like there is any external system that we use. And so that's what I'm hoping people come away with, that Rails, when you're using external LLMs and you're not doing like making your own models and that kind of thing, Rails and Ruby are great for the kinds of things that we're doing in our products with AI.
Yeah, there's nothing out of the ordinary.
Right. Okay, so we expected prompt to have been called, prompt.new to have been called one time. It hasn't been called at all, and that's because we just didn't do anything in there.
Mhm.
So this takes text. So we need to know what we're like. We got to give something to the prompt. We haven't written a spec for this yet. And so let's go back over to our spec and say, okay, what do we want this prompt to look like? It's going to take text. And so say, summarize the following opportunity description.
This is the thing unique to working with LLMs is being savvy at prompting.
Yeah,
Writing
this is
prompts.
not the prompt we're going to end up with because it's probably
Yeah.
not specific enough to doing the right thing. But we'll start there. And so now if we run that, oh, it's going to fail because I have a syntax error. But oh, that's not a syntax error in Ruby anymore. I don't know if you know this, Jimmy. This is new syntax in Ruby 3 that
Mm-hmm.
what it's shortcut for is the local, like the variable text passed to the keyword text. A little bit
It's
like
like the
JavaScript
symbol, right?
being
Text is
able
a
to,
symbol.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the shorthand for object syntax,
yeah.
almost in JavaScript.
So, okay, so but what we're getting is text is nil. It is being called, but text was nil. Um, and so, um, and then this would be opportunity description.
Mm-hmm.
So expected prompt to have received perform. So we'll add the call to perform. What perform returns is a result object. So it got nil. So generate isn't saving anything yet, and our spec is expecting the summary to have been saved there.
Mm.
So if we say response, and then we say, and the generated summary has text, so we can say response dot text. So
Nice.
that passes now, and summarizes the opportunity description, saving the response from the LLM to that text
Mm-hmm.
field. Let's write, let's see. Let's do a failure case here. What we want when it doesn't succeed. So context when there is a prompting error.
Do we have another one of these in our question spec that we can use?
I don't actually think there is, but I know how to deal with it.
Cool.
It saves a summary. It saves. I think in a case where it errors, I think what we'll do, at least for now, is save the text of the error to the summary so that you can just, it'll be obvious that there was an error generating the summary.
Mm-hmm. So this is most likely a scenario where like the LLM call times out or something like that.
in my experience, that's usually not what the errors will be. And you don't get that meaningful of errors back. It'll be like from ChatGPT, it'll be like error 400. And you'd be like, I guess I did something wrong with my prompt. But so the way perform works when there's an error, the response has success is false and error has some text in it. That's what that looks like. So now we're creating an error response. And so what we would expect, we don't need this. What we'd expect is error text to be there.
Do we want to check for success false as well?
We will in our code, but we're just running the spec now. So it received the unexpected message text. And that's because we're calling response.text, but our specs no longer does that out. So now we go over here. We say if, so we say text equals, and we say if response.success, then we do response.text. And if it's a failure, then we do response.error.
Nice. Yep.
And now we save the text. I believe that's going to make this spec pass. Cool. But it's going to make our other spec fail because it's now where our method is now calling success, and we didn't stub that out in the first instance. So we now need to add success. And in this case, it's the true. So now everything in our spec file should pass. And to celebrate the pass, we will remind everybody, if you like passing specs, you can work with Thoughtbot to make your specs pass. Contact us at thoughtbot.com/hire us. We love doing this kind of stuff, and we're doing a lot of work bringing LLMs and AI into people's products, into their operations, and using Rails and Ruby to do it. So please get in touch. If you've got questions or comments along the way, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're monitoring it, and we'd love to hear from you. Cool. So we now have a class where it'll generate a summary. It's got a generate method, and the prompt. So we've now got the building blocks where we can play with this and see what it actually returns. Right now, we're just summarizing the opportunity to description. So let's go, and we only have a model level, but let's go over and see what we get.
Let's see what we did. Yeah.
So the opportunity ID here is that. So load up the opportunity. And then we create a I should have saved that to a variable, but okay, so we have it as a summary. And so now we can say summary generate. It's gonna already, since we're already using OpenAI in this app, we already have an environment variable. We already have the prompt class is already working. So let's see what the summary is. So it's all what we're passing as the description is already pretty short. So the summary isn't much of a summary at all because it's already
Yeah, so we're
pretty
just getting
summarized.
ChatGPT's take on the description, basically.
Yeah. And so let's just experiment a little bit. What if we say summarize the following out into one sentence? That looks like more than one sentence to me,
Definitely
GPT.
does. Yep. It's just like, I'll use commas now. No, that's still,
Yeah. It's more than one sentence and it's not
yeah.
even using commas. Provide, this might be just the way we're wording it. Provide
A one sentence summary.
a one sentence summary.
Let's see. Yeah.
Oh, you know why I didn't recreate? I didn't. So this needs to be reloaded. The class
Mm-hmm.
itself needs to be the variable needs to be reloaded. So that was actually probably the issue.
Got it.
Cool. This is much more of an interesting summary.
Mm-hmm.
Despite facing a setback with the departure of our technical co-founder, we have a validated idea, positive feedback, a functioning prototype, and potential customers eager to use our product, but urgently need engineering support to bring our MVP to life and maintain momentum.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good summary of what the
Mm-hmm.
customer originally wrote. Uh, we have a question about how to become part of the Thoughtbot team. So first of all, we have a position that's still open. As long as you live in the Americas, you can go to thoughtbot.com/jobs and there's a senior developer position open there. Rails is the focus of that position, working with existing applications to help improve them, existing teams to help improve them. And there's a whole listing of the skills that we look for that. So visit that page and that'll be a good place to find out that information. Okay, Jimmy, what do you think? Should we add all of the comment
Oh
text?
yeah. So we'll have to
Okay.
recraft our prompt
Yes.
and add some
So
additional context.
let's just a generated summary spec is currently failing because we changed the prompt text.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So um by adding more details about what the prompt specifically is, we're coupling this generated summary class directly to our opportunity class. It's already coupled because it has an association with it, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine, but you can start to see the parts where we'll probably pull this apart. Like we don't want the generated summary class to have an association with just opportunity. We want it to be associated with different models. And those models should probably know how they're summarized rather than the generated summary class
Yeah.
knowing
So
how every one of those models is best summarized.
the test specific to an opportunity using the generated summary model
Right.
should be maybe on the opportunity spec.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
we can start to lay the groundwork for that change by instead of going into the generated summary and being like, okay, we have to put the comments here and all that stuff, we could instead call to summary or to summary prompt, something like that.
Yeah, and that's all the text would be, right?
Yeah, and then the opportunity knows how to generate what should be summarized
Mm-hmm.
on
It's
itself.
responsible for its own prompt.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So now we can go over to the opportunity spec. And if we go to the bottom, let's just see how the spec is written. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah, there's individual describe blocks for the methods on. And we're going to say, what did I call it? To summary prompt?
Yeah, I think so.
Something like that. Okay. So it should include the description. That's what we already had.
Mm-hmm. Comments.
I think what we'll do is just write a spec for
Each piece.
yeah. Opportunity. Oh, I messed that up. And then we create an opportunity. This is doesn't need to be a saved opportunity, so we can keep the performance of our specs up by just building an opportunity that's not saved to the database, because it's not going to be loading anything to the database in this spec. That won't be the case when we're making sure it contains the comments, because that needs to be a full saved thing. So there is no class. There's no method with that name. To generate it. No, to summary prompt. So that's going to be empty. Undefined method contain, and that is because it is to
contains.
Now I'm blanking on.
Same. To include.
Ah, yes. Nice one.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, so expected nil to include it makes money. We go over to our opportunity factory. We can see that the description is always it makes money. So then we have the opportunity class, and we can say description. So that's going to get us back to where we were before. And our generated summary spec should, well, let's change our spec to.
I see. Okay.
So now we're no longer touching the generated summary as we modify what goes into an opportunities summary. We're now over in the opportunity world, modifying the specs there.
Mm-hmm.
So what do we want to include the comments. So the comments on an opportunity are using action text. So that's why I specified the text version, because action text by default when you render it, it returns HTML. But we're going to be doing the text version. We need to add comments to an opportunity, so it needs to be saved to the database. This is called commentable, the polymorphic association.
Okay.
We want this to be comment.
Do we need to eventually update the generated summary to not have that, make this one sentence bit?
Say that again.
We still need to remove the text that's like make this into one sentence, right? Because the entire prompt will be coming from that method on this class.
Oh yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it's actually on body here. Dot body. Cool. So it expected it makes money to include comment body, and it didn't. So now if we go over here, we can do we'll just do a one-liner for oh no, it's on body, so we're not gonna be able to do that. So what we'll actually potentially want to do is well, so you were saying we might want to push the prompt text down into the prompt.
Into this,
and that's
method,
not wrong. But if we wanted every object, if we wanted comments to know what goes into summary for them, and so that we could just call to summary on that, we might not want to have the prompt text in there. We might just want it to be the information that goes into the summary.
I think I see what you're saying. Wouldn't we want, does that mean the LLM will receive two prompts, one for description and one for comments?
Not if we don't push the text of the prompt down into to summary prompt. And that's where this method might be better called to summary. Oops. So that we don't, let's just see where this takes us. But
yeah. Are we excluding like the comment author if we're just getting the body, or does the body include all that?
Body doesn't include that.
Okay. That seems important, right?
Yep.
If I see the summary like referencing folks, yeah, in their comments.
I actually don't know off the top of my head whether it's called person. Yeah, so it's person. So you can sort of see how we might want a method on comment that is used to generate summary, so we're not stuffing all of this into the comments or into the opportunity class. Okay, but that's passing now. So let's go back to our console and see what we get. Well, right now our prompt is saying a one sentence discover. So let's see what happens.
That's a big ask. Okay. Hmm.
So it basically dropped. It's not so summary. Let me put it. It'll be easier to read. So it's basically not really including information from the comments. It's mostly just
Right.
summarizing down that description again.
Hmm.
So how might we change the prompt to include more of the generated summary? I think we basically need to give more room to it.
Yeah, I'm stuck on this idea of this generated summary class. The prompt would just be fed to this as opportunity dot to summary prompt, and then to
Mm-hmm.
summary prompt on the model calling this
Yeah.
would include the big beefy prompt that's like, hey, here's the description, and then below that you've got here are the related comments for this opportunity. Can you make a summarization using the description and these comments?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of different ways to word that.
Okay.
That's a art in itself.
So let's just see like 5 bullet point.
And this will apply to everything.
Yeah, let's see what this returns and then we can.
Mm-hmm.
So idea validated through research, positive UI feedback, early prototype and VC term sheet, urgent need for engineering support, recruiting founding teammate and head of engineering to maintain momentum, 4 potential customers eager to use project, desire to wow them, appreciation for engineering support to bring MVP to life.
Still not much info about the comments.
Yeah. So this is where I think like the purpose behind the or what we're hoping to achieve out of this is to get a more of an idea of the current status of the opportunity, right? So um what if we just ask what is the current status of the following potential project? Let's see what that gives us and whether it gets us closer to what we're hoping to ultimately achieve.
Mm-hmm.
So the team is eager to move quickly and is in the process of scheduling a call with potential developers and designers to review the prototype and discuss next steps. They've also been working on a proposal for the project and are finalizing contracts with the client. So that's a little bit more of what we're going to get.
It's a
So
little better.
part.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot to mention this in the beginning, but before even starting on this problem, what I did was I went to the ChatGPT UI and copy and pasted a bunch of text from opportunities and experimented with prompts. And what I found was that this was a very hard problem to get meaningful, exactly what we want. The more comments there were, the harder it was to get meaningful comments. And the reason why is because or to get meaningful status, because you can have one comment at the end that says what the status is, but the way an LLM works is it's going to try to take all of the other information all along the way. And this is gets into sort of a problem where LLMs are is like you can overwhelm them with irrelevant information that no
Mm-hmm.
longer is relevant.
What I'm curious if can you add more prompt text like below the description here? That's like, can you use the comments, or can you pull key points from the comments below? Because I keep thinking like the prompt, the LLM isn't going to know where the description ends and the comments begin in the way that the
Yeah.
prompt is crafted.
Yeah. You
It's just
want
one big blob.
to drive a little bit to see that text there.
But let's see.
And while you do that, I'm just going to step away for just 1 sec, and I'll be
Okay.
right back.
Alrighty. Okay, so we've got, what is the current status of the following potential project? And then we've got the description below that. I might want to specify that, hey, this is just the description. And then, so I just added, can you pull key points from the comments below? Maybe we can say that have been made by members of our team. And then, what is the current status of the following potential project? Chad, I was just thinking maybe we would want to add this below as the project description or something like that, just so the LLM knows what is what. And then I added, can you pull key points from the comments below that have been made by members of our team? And then this needs a little bit of work, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we can see what this does.
Cool. Yeah.
Interesting.
So key points from the comments made by members of the team include need for engineering support to bring the MVP to life, scheduling calls to review the prototype and discuss estimates, details about the product being an e-commerce platform for hotels to order supplies, notes from a call discussing the prototype, features and technical concerns, drafting a proposal for the project, discussion about the contract revisions made by the client. Next steps involving discovery sessions, sending contracts and sharing case studies, concerns about sections of the revised service agreement, including warranties and limitations of liability.
That's great, but it kind of ignored my, what is this thing?
Right.
Yeah. So maybe, yeah, I feel like this is something you could wiggle on all day. But I would want to see more about the project overview and then maybe a shortened tell to like make like what you were doing earlier, 5 bullet points of the comment key points or something like that.
Yeah. So let's take one more crack at that. So, you are an expert sales assistant. Please summarize into one sentence the following potential design and development project, followed by 5 bullet points summarizing the comments from the design and development agency. You are an expert sales assistant at a design and development agency. Please summarize into one sentence the following potential design and development project, followed by 5 bullet points summarizing the comments from the design and development agency team members. Provided by the client.
Yeah. Yeah, just say these are the comments
Of the design and development, say, team members. So we've taken a big leap here in terms of what we're asking this to do, but let's see.
We're being like very verbose, but I guess that's a good thing. You just want to have as much detail as possible.
So now we get the client is seeking engineering support to bring their MVP to life following the departure of their technical co-founder. Yada, yada, yada. The team is eager to move quickly. The prototype includes features like marketplace, payments, and reporting with a focus on user experience and order tracking. The project involves integrating with multiple suppliers, handling payments, and ensuring a seamless ordering process. The team is considering starting the project on July 17th with a 1 to 2 week onboarding sprint, followed by, this is much more better.
This is great.
This
Yeah,
is better.
much more
Way
better.
By an 8-week implementation phase, there are concerns about the contract terms, particularly regarding the use of open source libraries and limitations of liability.
What's funny is that now I'm thinking it would almost be nice to have a separate summary for the project description and the UI, and then a separate summary of the comments.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would want that summary of the comments to still take into account the summary of the description.
Yeah, because so often we are summarizing or we're saying, oh, we learned this about the project, and that's happening in a comment. But this is already so much better than what we have. One thing I like to do, which we're coming up on time here, so we'll start to move towards wrapping up. But we changed the prompt quite a bit all at once, and it got us much closer to where we hope we would eventually be. But I used a bunch of knowledge about how prompts are written to make big leaps in that, but we don't actually know what things made a difference. And it might be nice to, it is usually nice to be like, well, did telling it that it's an expert sales assistant, did telling it that it's an expert sales assistant at a design and development agency, did those things actually matter or not? So we can do this and remove that part of the prompt and generate again and see how different it ends up being. I mean, there it completely didn't include any of the information about that timeline or that kind of thing. So now let's put it back and see whether it actually matters or not. So yeah, that one sentence, you're an expert sales assistant at a design and development agency, completely changes the information and that it's returning and makes it much more valuable.
Something that's tricky is consistency. It doesn't mention the weeks timeline. Yeah. So it's not great that you could, every time someone adds in a comment, the summary would perhaps be quite different. Is there a way to track what it's tell it, hey, you generated this before, taking into account this new comment, can you update this? Or is, I wonder.
And that's where what we would get into is that summaries should have additional instructions and the ability
Yeah.
to for people to put additional instructions on there.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, awesome. Any other questions or things you want to try?
This is fun. I'm excited to see this once we get it shipped. I want to
Yeah.
use it,
Well,
look at
again, the
opportunities.
the sort of as I've been exploring this feature, the one thing I do run into is that it is easy for certain comments to overwhelm the LLM and sort of take over, even when they're not the most recent comments. And I have
Mm-hmm.
tried to get it to provide the comment dates,
Mm-hmm.
but that strikes, LLMs don't actually know what dates are and the order of them. That's we start to get into the territory of things that are hard for LLMs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I do feel optimistic that we'll be able to get there eventually. And like you were saying, what ultimately might be necessary is separating it out and saying, tell me about the project, tell me about the work we'd be doing on
Mm-hmm.
it. Might be different. So
Yep.
once again,
And
oh, go ahead.
mhm. I was just thinking, we built this in sort of a plug and play way. So is the thinking to figure out the privacy concerns with comments maybe containing stuff
Oh,
just to
thank
use
you
like a
for
local
mentioning that. So
LLM?
the privacy
Mm-hmm.
concerns, turns out if you're concerned about sending that level of information to OpenAI with this unstructured data, there's basically nothing you can do. The only solution then is to find a different provider that you are comfortable sending that information to. And at the end of the day, that might only be self-hosting your own LLM. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do next time. So this is the seg
Hey.
the lead up to the segue. Next time, we are setting up our own local LLM that we using models that can be hosted on Amazon instances, and put inside our own containers and all that stuff. So that's what we're going to be doing next time. And when we implement that, we are going to be using embeddings to show relationships between articles and on our blog. That's what we're going to be doing. And we're going to be using a local LLM instead of OpenAI for that.
Be very cool.
So I hope people tune in next time. That's next week on Thursday. Check out the comments for the link to that, as well as, if you need help with your Rails app, whether you want AI in your product or not, we're here. We've been here for the last 20 years creating great products that people love to use. So, or if you have an existing Rails app that you need help with, if you're a user of our open source and you'd like to feedback on a problem that you're having or whatever, don't hesitate to get in touch. Place where you can do that is at thoughtbot.com /hire-us, or just go to thoughtbot.com and check it out. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And see you next time. Jimmy, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Chad.